Because Godzilla is a Japanese character and thus reflects the aspects of their own lived experience, Godzilla would of course change dramatically when translated for a different culture entirely. This is what brings us to the various American Godzilla adaptations, the ones that were made and the ones that never got off the ground. Once you take a look at how each version was like, it really puts into perspective just how much the character can radically change and in some ways stay the same. You know, technically speaking, the first attempt at an American Godzilla occurred in 1983. Steve Miner, then best known for directing Friday the 13th, Part 2 and Part 3, approached Toho with a proposal for a Godzilla film, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, in 3D. Miner had just worked in 3D and believed the miniature effects would lend themselves perfectly to the format. Toho surprisingly agreed to co-finance the development, giving Miner the green light to seek American studio backing. The plot involved a meteor triggering an automated nuclear strike that awakens Godzilla, who would gradually make landfall in the United States, searching for his dead baby. Miner approached Rick Baker for an animatronic Godzilla head, David Allen for stop-motion effects, and William Stout for concept art, and Steve Zerkis for a prototype Godzilla figure. Producers John Peters and Keith Barish expressed interest in the project, but the projected budget of 25 to 30 million drove every major studio away. They simply refused to spend that kind of money on what they considered a children's film. By the end of 1984, Miner gave up, and Toho shifted focus to their own Return of Godzilla. The second major attempt came in 1992 when Sony acquired the rights to Godzilla and assigned the project to TriStar Pictures with John DeBont set to direct. Terry Rossio and Ted Elliott were hired to write the screenplay, completing a draft by 1994 that would feature Godzilla fighting a new monster called the Griffin. The Griffin served as the primary antagonist. It was an alien consumption entity created by a probe that merges Earth's creatures into one beast. With a lion's body and a hydra-headed snake tongue, it fires energy bolts and possesses disturbing adaptive intelligence. It exists only to destroy and clear the way for extraterrestrial colonization. In terms of Godzilla himself, he was a bioengineered ancient weapon created from dinosaur genetic material by an ancient civilization and left in stasis beneath the Arctic, where he was accidentally discovered during a nuclear waste salvage operation. When the Griffin awakens, Godzilla instinctively pursues it across the globe. It's important to know that Godzilla isn't fighting the Griffin to save humanity, but to fulfill its programmed purpose of destroying the alien threat before they can reproduce. He is neither a hero nor villain, but a force of nature. The film would have featured traditional miniature effects combined with cutting-edge CGI. Stan Winston Studios created a detailed maquette and sculptures of both Godzilla and the Griffin. Now, this film was actually very deep into development, with countless storyboards depicting key moments from the movie, and a full-on production team was even assembled. Realistically, nothing should have stopped this movie from coming out. Well, until TriStar pulled the plug in late 1994. The official reason was budget. Sony estimated that the script would cost 140 to 180 million, which they did not want to adapt. Of course, by this point, it wasn't long until DeBont left the film altogether. When DeBont departed, TriStar approached Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin, the team behind Independence Day. They had previously declined the project multiple times, with even Emmerich expressing that Godzilla was a dopey and childish IP. But after reading the Rossio-Elliott script, they realized an American Godzilla could actually work, especially since the script was much more serious with the character than their initial impressions of the franchise. There was one condition though: they wanted to discard the original script and handle the film however they wanted. This means a lot of the fantastical aspects of the earlier scripts, such as the giant kaiju battles, were removed. Released in 1998, this Godzilla was radically different from anything that came before. The creature was a mutated iguana fast and agile, capable of producing asexually and laying eggs in Madison Square Garden. In terms of the design, Zilla looked a lot more like a dinosaur than the traditional upright kaiju, with a sleek horizontal posture and the ability to run at high speeds. The original design from the debunked version was thrown away pretty early on, as there was a belief that it looked too similar to the Japanese version. So when this new version was being developed, they commissioned for the design to be a bit more grounded and scary looking to reflect the more serious tone of this new movie. The film was not a huge hit when it released in 1998, leading to plans for a trilogy being abandoned and Toho eventually reclaiming the rights in 2003, releasing Godzilla 2000. But what would this sequel have been like? Following the 1998 film release, TriStar initially moved forward with Godzilla 2, intending to continue the story with a surviving baby Godzilla. Early ideas explored making the creature more heroic, potentially involving multiple Godzillas and even a visit to a monster island. In this version, the sole surviving offspring of the original Godzilla, now grown into a young adult, would take center stage as a more protector-like figure. The plot shifted to Australia, where Zilla Jr. would battle a massive new antagonist, a giant, mutant, termite-like insect dubbed the Queen Bee or Queen Bee. This Queen Bee ruled over a hive of enormous mutated insects. However, budgetary disputes and the poor critical reception of the previous Godzilla led to this project's abandonment. In 2001, a different Godzilla film entered early development that was a spur-of-the-moment idea. This was Godzilla Reborn, a project that represented everything the 1998 film wasn't, faithful to the original Toho character. However, the interesting thing about this project in particular is that it was gonna serve as a direct sequel to the 1999 film Godzilla 2000 Millennium. The story reportedly followed a familiar structure we're used to. Godzilla emerges in Honolulu, Hawaii, drawn to something particular: Miba's awakening. Miba was a massive bat-like creature with a body covered in volcanic rock. The flying creature had been dormant within the volcano crater, awakened by an eruption. Godzilla and Miba battle for the first time, with the military of course interfering, unaware of the true threat. The rest of the film follows the typical Godzilla structure. There was one interesting moment where the US military actually kills Godzilla, causing the military to clone him out of desperation. The project stalled in 2002, and of course, after the rights expired, there was no way this film would ever get off the ground. Okay, now this film was not exactly an American Godzilla film, but American creatives did have a role in the making of it. Godzilla 3D to the Max, also known as Godzilla 3D, emerged from a bizarre 2007 collaboration between Toho and Yoshimitsu Banno, the director of the 1971 Godzilla vs. Ghidorah. Banno had spent decades trying to get another Godzilla project off the ground, and he turned to American writer and director Keith Melton to help develop a 40-minute IMAX 3D experience. The story was simple enough. Godzilla battles a new monster called Deathla, a spiky, Ghidorah-like creature with a skeletal, skull-like face, red slimy skin, and bone spikes. On top of that, they can also split into thousands of smaller versions of itself. The project collapsed in 2008 when Toho pulled the plug. Finally, there came the successful attempt at a Godzilla film in 2010 when Legendary Pictures secured the rights from Toho, leading to Gareth Edwards' Godzilla 2014. Edwards' Godzilla was explicitly a force of nature, neither hero or villain, but an anti-hero. The 2014 Godzilla was established as an ancient alpha predator, part of Earth's natural ecosystem, awakened by humanity's disturbance of the balance of the world. The design returned to the classic Toho aesthetic, but it was much more modernized to fit in with what Americans would want to see from a Godzilla design. They were taller than any previous version, but also much thicker and more aggressive. This time around, Toho was involved in the design process, ensuring that this version respected the original and did not turn out like the TriStar version.